And we're waiting. All right, and you're live.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and welcome to the Saturday day of the Coastal Magic 10th anniversary weekend. We are obviously virtual this year instead of being out by the beach, so thank you for joining us from wherever you are calling home right now. This morning's panel is going to be about a trope that people have strong feelings about. The name of the panel is To Insta Love or Not to Insta Love. So we'll talk a little bit about romance and love and how that progression happens in stories and what you think is proper. Just for kicks. So that's what we're going to chat about this morning. Carrie Lamore is with us and Amy Lane is with us. Tori Kellett hopefully will be joining us shortly, and then we'll have our trio. For right now, why don't we do a little bit of introductions? Carrie, why don't you let people know who you are and what you write, and then Amy can follow.
Hi, I'm Carrie Lamore. I write small town contemporary romance, and I also write romantic suspense. I like to call it light romantic suspense, romance with a splash of danger.
Nice.
Very cool. Amy?
Let's see. Amy Lane. And I write
Amy?
everything. Contemporary paranormal, urban fantasy, mystery suspense. They leave anything else out? I mean, I've got a little bit of steampunk and a little bit of sci-fi in there, but pretty much everything.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's see here. If people have questions and comments that they are would like to share, then by all means do that. I'm going to be asking questions of our panelists, obviously, but then I will also be taking a little peek off to the side here and looking to see if anyone has any questions or comments that they're putting in the feed. We are coming to you live from Zoom via the Continual page. Continual is a fantastic way that you can do convention-like panels and discussions and things like that all year round. It's a fantastic place to spend some time. You get to check out some cool authors and hear some cool chats. They've been very generous with their time today and are letting us put some of our Coastal Magic programming on their page. So that's where we're broadcasting from, but it's also being shared over onto our regular Coastal Magic pages. So if you're watching from any of those locations and you want to ask questions during the panels, definitely do that. And I'll be looking to see what you guys are saying and what you have, what questions you may have. So definitely let me know what is going on there. For starters, and as I say that, my phone just died. I've got it plugged in, but it just died. So I might have to enlist some assistance in that respect. In any case, let's get started with you two lovelies. What do you think about Insta Love? Let's just start out with that right off the bat. Are you a fan of Insta Love, that trope in a book, a romance book, or is it not something that you care for? Let's start with Amy and then we'll move to Carrie.
Yes and no. I have written the from the beginning of time romance. These two people meet as children and then grow into friends and then grow into lovers, or they've always been best friends. And I like that romance. I like the roommates to lovers. I like the friends to lovers. I like the enemies to lovers. But sometimes I also like ooh, I'm in a jam and this snarky stranger helped me out. And, oh, hey, my life is taking a turn.
Yeah.
I think that's exciting too. It's, you have those moments and it doesn't have to be love. Sometimes it's friendship, but we have those moments. I like to think that, of instant attraction, instant affinity. And to take that through to a grand romance is just fun. It's part of the fantasy.
Cool. Carrie?
I have to agree with Amy in a lot of ways. I'm not a huge fan of insta love when it's two people who have never met and suddenly over the course of a weekend they're going to be together for the rest of their life. And that doesn't mean that I don't believe in love at first sight, because I do think that you can have two people who meet and have a connection, like an instant connection to each other. A lot of times it starts off physical, but sometimes it can be, especially in suspense. If you're writing suspense or anything that has that adrenaline rush, I guess my problem with insta love, because insta lust is kind of a completely different story.
That was going to be one of my questions. How do you clarify the difference? So we'll get into that in a minute. Yeah.
Sure. But my thought is, you've got, and I write suspense, but sometimes my suspense, the people have known each other at least peripherally. So they're aware of each other. And to me, at least they know who the other is. I just find it easier. If my book is going to take place in a really short period of time, like a couple of weeks, honestly, I have to have those people know each other previously. That doesn't mean in the future that I won't, because I've got some things that are down the road, but for the most part, if, my books, I usually will stretch them out, over the course of usually minimally at least a month, sometimes longer, depending on the storyline, depending on what's going on.
Right.
The suspensey one, sometimes you need to shorten it a little bit, because how long can you stretch out, the suspense?
Right.
But my thought is with insta love, people who are on that, like the suspense, the adrenaline rush, at some point life is going to get back to normal, or you hope so, because God, if they're running from bad guys their whole life, that kind of is a problem. But then what happens when, we go about our daily business and he's dropping his clothes on the floor and leaving toothpaste in the sink, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's not just the physical, it's not just the adrenaline.
Right.
Then what happens,
Right.
So I think it has to be written well.
It's like the end of Peacemaker. Did you guys all see that movie, Nicole Kidman, George Clooney, 1,000 years ago, where they have this super, super intense, like 48 hours. And then at the end of it, she's crying in his arms, and then they get taken away because they're both contaminated with nuclear radiation. And you're like, they have to go outside and bark. It's a thing. And then they don't end up together right there. A couple of weeks later, some of the wounds have healed, and he shows up at her work at the end of her, like she's swimming, and she goes, did you get some new shiny medals? Yes, I did. Would you like to come with me to coffee? Sure, let me finish my laps. And you're like, okay, still snarky. There's a possibility in the future.
Right. Well, I wouldn't call that insta love though. I would call it insta love like that 48-hour time period happened and then they were together from that point out.
Yeah.
I think there's and again, like Terry was saying, there's a difference between insta lust and insta love. Yeah. And I think there's a difference between immediate attraction that becomes more and immediate attraction that is more right away.
Yeah.
So I think that's where people make their differences. So my question, Carrie touched on it. So what do you consider the difference between insta love and insta lust? Amy?
I think you said it. I'm trying to think of when I have done insta lust. But I agree with Carrie that there is generally that peripheral awareness. My mind goes back to a story I wrote a gazillion and 6 years ago called Going Up. And it was a Christmas novella, and originally Christmas novellas had a word limit of 18K, right? 20K. And so the question is always, how do you get these two people to fall in love in 20,000 words?
Right.
And a lot of times it's, a lot of times you have to use that prior, and in this case, I had two guys fall in love in an elevator. they saw each other a couple of times a week in the elevator. And every time they saw each other, it just kind of built. It was like,
Mhm.
this other guy is really adorable. He's so cute. What is he doing? He's so cute. He's dressing up for his classes. I can't wait to see what, and it just built. And in a way, I was insta love, because when they got together, you know, it was like the guy stayed the night and never really moved out. But in
Mhm.
another way, you had that building up of curiosity and does this person make me smile day after day after day?
Mhm.
And
Right.
so it always feels like there has to be some sort of balance or other factor. And that doesn't mean that insta lust doesn't work. Do you guys know who Dan Savage is? Dan Savage
I know
is
the name. I know the name.
he's a columnist, and he's out of Seattle, and his husband, Terry, started out, it's kind of a famous story, started out as a one-night stand. And then Dan got up to go to work the next day, and Terry was sick. He had a fever of 103.
Oh no.
And Dan ended up taking care of a virtual stranger that he'd only brought home because of insta lust. And Terry never left.
Oh goodness.
I love
Right?
that story.
And
That's fantastic.
I always keep that in mind when I'm reading someone else's insta love book or whatever. I always keep in mind that it can happen,
Right.
you know, that that there are real life stories all the time. I remember, okay, my own, and this is 2,612 years ago, when my husband and I were working at McDonald's. And this is how we met. This is how I became aware of him. My best friend at McDonald's said, "Did you see the new guy? He's cute. I'm gonna get him."
Mhm.
And I looked over and I saw my husband, and you have to understand how geeky we both were. Okay. He had ears that stuck out. He weighed approximately 120 pounds and was 5'11". Okay. His
goodness.
Adam's apple could poke out eyes. And I looked at him and went, oh. And then I went, oh, but Carrie wants him. And you know, what followed is, of course, teenage opera, because we were like 18 years old. But that moment of going, oh, and that was
Mhm.
it. That was it. I had offers and I didn't even realize they were there, because there was the, you know, the holy grail of Adam's apple and blue eyes. And there I was.
That is adorable.
It is adorable.
Wonderful.
And in
Very
a way, it was
sweet.
insta love, you know, but
Yeah.
it was insta love with a 1.5 year prelude.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Carrie, what do you think?
Well, insta lust to me is more of a physical thing. You
Mhm.
know, they meet and they like how the other person looks. I mean, to me, like, you can have, you know, the love at first sight is one thing. And as much as I think that you can have love at first sight, but I think it then has to grow and develop. You know,
Right.
insta lust is, you know, two people who physically are attracted to each other, and they combust and have sex, and it's the
Right.
best they've ever had, and they connect through sex. And I mean, I absolutely think that insta lust can then, you know, grow into love.
Right.
But I think any kind of love is going to take time. You know,
Right.
as much as, you know, even the love at first sight, you fall in love with an image, you fall in love
Yeah.
with something that you see, it's visual, you
Mhm.
know, and not that it can't happen, but at some point you have to get to know this person, because, you know, you could look at somebody, and I mean, there are guys that I was like, oh my God, he is like,
Yeah.
you know, so amazing, so wonderful, and all this stuff. And then, you know, later on you find out and you go, oh God, he does that, or he does this, or this is how
Right.
he thinks. And it's like, that would not have flown with me.
Yeah.
So I think that's where reality comes in, you know,
Right.
and we're fiction authors. We don't deal with
Mhm.
reality, but you like
Right.
to throw in a little bit. And like I had said before, if I have a couple that's going to get together fairly quickly, I think the only story I did that was like under a month, I did a novella called Unstable Ground. And it was two people who were trapped in an earthquake, like in the building that had crumbled. And my way of doing that is that they had actually dated back when they were in college, and then she left cross country to go take another job and left him right when he proposed marriage. So he is now, they're supposed to go look at this building. Her company wants to renovate it and see, you know, if it's worth buying. He's an engineer, a structural engineer, not realizing, because he works for a different company, and they both meet, and it's like, oh, and they go into the building to start looking around, and an earthquake hits, trapping them in there. So, you know, it takes place in like a 3-day period of time before they get rescued. But my only way of doing that was to have them, they had a previous relationship. They were in love before, and they are still in love. You know, they had never quite gotten over the other person. So, so, you know, I guess that's how I do it, that these, you know, people have known each other in some capacity before. Like Amy was saying, I love the glancing, you know, like you see the same person every single day, or, you know, a couple days a week in an elevator. And, you know, and I've had stories too of, you know, somebody who goes to the same bar over and over again, and it's like, you know, there's the same bartender there, or the same whatever, you know. And so they may not know tons about the other person, but that awareness is there.
That awareness, I wrote a book. I always have it near my thing because I'm always talking about it. Okay, I wrote a book about romance tropes. And one of the things I was at, there are 5. I always forget numbers, but there are a number of veils to intimacy, right? That there are things in the way of intimacy. And one of the first levels of intimacy is actual awareness, is recognition. And recognition can be as simple as looking each other in the eye and going, oh, interesting. You know, and you don't, there doesn't have to be any words, but that's the first one. And you're right. For me, it's like, you have to have achieved at least that first level of awareness, you know, over, and often it's over time. Oh, yeah. Interesting.
And sometimes the awareness is one-sided. I think back to my husband and I went to college together. He was a year older than me. And when we met, he said, oh yeah, he says, I used to see you all the time walking. There was this one building on campus that was kind of, you know, way down the street. And so he said, yeah, I used to see you walking to McKay building all the time. You were with Bonnie Gow. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, how come I didn't, I never, you know, because he knew Bonnie and he would say hi to Bonnie. And then he was like, oh, well, I was walking with Steve Hoffman. I'm like, that's why I didn't notice you, because Steve Hoffman was pretty cute. And I knew Steve. So I would always, you know, be like, hi, Steve, not noticing the really cute guy next to you. But, you know, and so he was aware of who I was. And then we ended up being in a class together. He sat in front of me. He used to turn around and hand me the attendance sheet. And it wasn't until we'd been doing this, handing the attendance sheet to each other for like 3 months, that we actually started talking to each other. And then, you know, he told me, he says, like, he knew who I was. I didn't know who he was. So that awareness, sometimes it has to be a mutual awareness before it can actually, because he may have noticed me, but I was completely unaware of him.
Distracted.
I was distracted. And you know what? I saw Steve Hoffman years later, and he was like bald. Now, granted, he's a doctor, so, you know, that was better. But my husband still has we've been married for 35 years. So I guess it was okay. But he's still got a full head of hair. So I've got the hair going for me.
Right. There the full head of hair isn't okay, because my husband too, 35 years later, full head of hair. I'm like, yay. Win.
Nice. Well, part of what you guys were talking about kind of leads into my next question. My next question is, how do you define love? Like, what makes it love? And can that happen instantly? So what do you, if you say love, if you say this couple is in love, or I love my husband, what does that mean?
Oh, well, we write entire books about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you to say it in 3 sentences. No.
No, being in love is a complicated set of things.
Right.
Usually it means, okay, to me, I guess to my characters, it means that, wow, it means that they will hammer out their rough spots to fit
Mhm.
another character's rough spots.
Gotcha.
And that takes time. But
Mhm.
that first spark of awareness, that first instant crush is
Mhm.
usually recognizing the other person's rough spots and how they clash with your own.
Gotcha.
Oh, that'll never work because he's a PI and he's always coming in looking damaged, and I don't want to get my suit dusty. Jackson and
Mhm.
Ellery, you know.
Yeah.
That recognition of the other person's, that we both have, that we're but more than that, okay, and again, a 35-year veteran of the marriage war, love is that idea that when shit gets really, really bad, there's no thought of running.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There's no thought of I could find this easier with someone else. No.
Mhm.
I hang in until we come out of this hands clasped.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like everything you said, but also I think love is where you are willing to sacrifice for that other person,
Mhm.
and not just sacrifice. Like, again, I write suspense novels, so a lot of times there's danger. And I have one series where the men are all, they were in the same military unit together. So they're all ex-military. So they have that, that integrity and that responsibility. And, they want to save the damsel in distress, even though she's, perfectly capable of her own.
Yeah.
So it's not just, oh, I will protect you, but it's, I will sacrifice for you. So they get to the point, and it could be, the woman sacrificing for the guy too. And, one of my books, Running Target, has this, the woman is very, I don't want to say mousy, but she's kind of introverted. She's not a very brave person. And the hero of the story is an FBI agent who's been on the run for a couple of years because he's got a hit from a mob boss on him. So he's been trying for a couple of years to get enough information, to put this guy away. And she ends up stepping out of her safety zone. They have a child together who, the twist is that the mob boss thinks the child is his grandson because she was friends with the mob boss's son. So, and the hero in self-defense killed the mob boss's son. That's why he's got the hit on him.
This is very Romeo and Juliet. It's great.
He was undercover and had a little fling with her, and didn't realize that she was pregnant. And
Romeo and Juliet meets a secret baby. I'm in.
Yeah, exactly. So he wants to, so this kid is starting to get older and starting to talk, and this guy wants to be involved in his kid's life, but he can't really be there because the mob boss is involved. So it ends up, but she steps out of her comfort zone. And she's been trying to protect this child that they have together, and she has to sacrifice in order to get the information to put this guy away so that she and her love can be together with their child.
Right.
And that to me is like, you sacrifice, you're willing to. A lot of my female characters, even if they're I don't want to say weak, but if they're not like, sometimes you have these female characters and they're bold and brassy and they're,
Right.
and I have some characters some females that are not like that.
Some women are not bold and brassy, so
and
that
the
makes
thing
perfect
is,
sense.
though, almost all of them, actually, all of them at some point step out of their comfort zone and they do something to protect somebody else. And that to me is, they do it because of the person that they love, because they want to protect that, and then guys also, maybe there is something that they've always wanted to do or whatever, but they will give something up for the other person in order to be together. Like Amy had said, you do something to, you work out your problems. So sometimes it's that sacrifice of, I'm going to give something up that I really love because I love you more.
Right. Gotcha. So when you're writing your characters and you're trying to decide when that connection, when that love is going to happen, when that joining or that union is going to happen, how do you know? How do you know when it's not too soon? How do you know when enough time has passed or enough things have happened? How do you judge where that falls in your storyline so that it doesn't happen too soon?
Well,
I think my characters tell me.
I was going to say, I hate to bring up word count. Sometimes word count is
Is a thing.
Yeah, is a thing. But sometimes word count forces me to get super creative. So hedge witches, everybody loves the hedge witches. They're like, woo! Okay, hedge witches. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I could have done that courtship forever. Okay, I could have spent Barty and Lachlan's car. I could have spent forever on that courtship, but I really couldn't because I had this one big conflict and I had 55,000 words. I know, but it was great because we got to see Barty and Lachlan through the rest of the series.
Right.
But so sometimes you really do have to compress your tropes, compress your moments. That you have to take, okay, this moment here when they're in the car, that has to mean something. This moment here that you have to have revelation and intimacy sometimes in the most unlikely of places. One of the things I try never to do is have inopportune sex in awkward places in order to hasten the relationship. I'll be honest. I read a romance once. I guess I was even in my 20s, right? So it was acrobatic and I probably could have done it. But two people had sex at a snowbank and I was like, no. Beds are there for a reason.
Holy moly.
And maybe that just makes me one of those women who is not bold and brassy and willing to get laid in a snowbank or a gravel pit or other places I have seen it happen,
or in a building that has been crumbled by by an earthquake, because mine did have.
Okay, yeah, but that could have been the last thing they did, so that's okay.
Well, they, of course, being, they had been in an office with like some sort of a staff room or something nearby, and there was a hole, and they ended up crawling through, and somebody pulled a whole bunch of. So one of the girl was smaller, so she crawled through, and there was a vending machine, so they pulled out some really, couple of year-old chips and things like that. I had to keep them alive for like at least 3 days. So,
a few cushions.
Right, they pulled a few cushions. So
a blanket, some wet wipes.
She had just come in on a plane. So she had this purse that of course had a couple bottles of water, and she had handy wipes, and I think she had some gum and tissues because I think of the bathroom.
Yeah.
But this is how I fly. I fly with everything in the world in this big purse. Gotcha. So I'm like, that's totally understandable that she would have all of this stuff in her purse. And I mean, it wasn't great. It wasn't like they were having gourmet meals, but they had like 2 cushions that they were able to put together. so that at least they weren't lying on a dirty, dusty floor.
Right. Right.
The things that we do for
Yeah.
our characters to get them comfortable.
Well,
Good.
but then there's, okay, sex while camping, yes. Okay. Sex while running from the mob.
Maybe not so much.
But I forget even where I came, where that tangent started. But I'm just saying that in the course of Insta-Love, I think a bed or at least 2 cushions, or bruises on
things a
your
little
knees in the
nicer.
name of Insta-Love is not an okay thing.
So have you, in any of your books, either of you, written a true Insta-Love relationship? Have you had that immediate spark that turned into that immediate connection that turned into an immediate decision to be, this is us for now, forever? Have either of you written that?
Most of my books, they know each other. I'm trying to think the ones where they're just meeting. I do have one where I think he sees her. This is a book called True Dreams. He has this, he's the son of rock and roll superstars. And so he grew up sex, drugs, rock and roll. But when his sister died, when he was about 18, he left. He was an addict, drugs and alcohol, and he worked for many years to get rid of that. So now he's on the opposite side of the country. It takes place in this little Cape Cod town. And he knows that he's a bad boy and he doesn't think he deserves anything. And he sees her, and she is the epitome of innocence. This long blonde hair, and she's got this pastel colored skirt with this little, bolo sweater, and she's sitting on the floor. He owns a bookstore, coffee shop, and she's got the light from behind her, and she's reading a story to some of the kids who had asked her to. And it's funny because she's there to apply for this job. And part of the job is doing story time with the kids. And he looks at her, and she's got this voice of an angel and the halo behind her. And he instantly falls in love right at that second. But he, his whole thing is, I don't deserve her. I'm still an alcoholic. I'm still a drug addict. Even though I've been clean for 6 years, I'm still an addict. And I would never be deserving of her. And with her, she's a little intimidated by him at first. So it takes her longer. And I think that's true. I think, and a lot of times, one person falls in love before the other.
Right.
And, although I have to say, the opposite of Insta-Love is the ones I have actually, it's the brother of the innocent girl. And he and the woman have known each other since they were kids. And she used to follow him around like a puppy. Her grandmother lived next door, and they just had very, very different, but they hung out, and they were like each other's first back when she was 17, he was 19. He thought she was very experienced. Her mother was very bohemian and all over the place. And she was too. And he didn't realize that she was innocent, and she kind of lured him up into a tree house and, whatnot. But then this is like 10 years later. Is it 10? Probably 7 or 8 years later. And she's been bopping in and out of his life, but her grandmother dies. She inherits the house next door, and he's helping her fix it up. And little by little, he realizes, and at the very end, he's actually talking to his mother, and he just stops and he goes, I'm in love with Gina. And she goes, and the mother goes, honey, you've been in love with her since you were a kid. And he goes, why didn't you tell me? So there's the opposite of that he's been in love with. This is why none of his relationships, this book has, he's very OCD, almost borderline, like autistic, like he's got certain things he's got to do. And I needed to show all of his quirks without sitting there. So I had this one scene where they're at this local bar and grill, and Gina is there, and she goes off with some of his old girlfriend and finds out there's 4 of them. Every single one of them have dated Alex. And so they start naming off: first date, coffee and a kiss on the cheek. second date this, third date this. And then they start, and he has to fold straw wrappers, and he has to straighten the necklace chain, and he has to, and his planner. And they list off, and it was my way of showing exactly how OCD this guy is without making him, like this ridiculous character.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to see that you've got all, this is all who he is.
Yeah.
Amy, did you have any 100% Insta?
Homebird. Homebird was Crispin, who was a homebody. He'd lost 2 sets of parents, his original set and then his foster parents, right when he was about to go into college. And he didn't go away to college because he had lost his foster parents, and he stayed there for his foster sister to help her get through school. And he had become a quiet, rather mousy man. And he had the big, bold thing about him was he had this set of friends who went, we're going to do things together. Crispin, come on, let's go. And so he found himself in the airport
like that
going,
sometimes.
we're going to Germany for Oktoberfest. And now this was based, my husband and his friends went off to Oktoberfest. That was our 50th birthday. He went to Oktoberfest, and he got to call me. Our birthdays are one day apart. He got to call me on my birthday, and it was both of our birthdays. So it was a big deal.
Oh, that's sweet.
Anyway, so Oktoberfest is really cool. I got all the pictures. And the thing is that all of my husband's friends know what I write. Okay. And they had a waiter there named Luca, who was so hot that all of my husband's completely straight friends are texting me going, okay, you need to write this guy into a romance book and I'll totally be his list.
I love it.
Which was really cute.
That's fantastic.
So in the story, Crispin is, he's got all his friends, Luca just kind of sees him and goes very, thinks he's cute, talks to him, and they hook up, and it's like a vacation fling. And Crispin's like, this is the most exciting, the most reckless, the boldest thing I've ever done. And I think I could really care for this guy, but he lives everywhere and I live in one place. I have a home.
Right.
And so they keep texting. And Crispin shows up at his doorstep about 2 weeks before Christmas, or Luca shows up on Crispin's doorstep about 2 weeks before Christmas. And just, they've been texting. Luca's like, I'd like to see you again. And it turns out that Crispin has used staying close to home as a way to make the world make sense, because he had suffered losses. Luca uses his very bohemian lifestyle as a way to make the world make sense. And when they are together, the world makes sense.
I love it. I love it.
But that was
Right.
That started off as a vacation, and which was just by as a byblow could write some of the hottest sex. Because Crispin didn't expect to see him after that weekend.
Right.
So,
Last question before we wrap up. Have you, in any other books or any other like TV shows or movies or anything like that, have you ever seen an Insta love that has done really, really well, that you believed that these people were in love, that whoever told the story did a fantastic job with it? Do you have any from any other books or TV shows or movies that you've seen that just really worked?
I've seen a number. I can't name them. I read so many books, but I think what makes an Insta love work versus what doesn't is you have to really get inside the characters' heads. I found some, weekend or 1 week romances or whatever that don't convince me. If they're just, they're going out and they're having coffee and, whatever, or even if they're having sex, but there has to be that deep emotional connection. And I think that really great authors can do that. They can make you think that 4 days is 4 months.
Is enough.
And I
yeah.
think that's the key is you have to, it can't just be, oh, he's cute, I enjoy being with him. There has to be something about the other person that is like, oh, wow, this person does such and such. Or, I can feel the good in their soul, or whatever it happens to be. A good writer can make me, because I'm not a huge fan of Insta love, just because of reality. But a good writer can make me believe that these two,
Right.
in less than a week, or a week or
Right.
2 weeks, whatever, are going to be good for the rest of their lives. But you have to delve deep. You have to really have them get this emotional connection. Can't just be, we're going out for coffee,
Right.
we're having a date,
Well,
or not even like just, oh yeah, we're having good sex. Like
Yeah.
sex
Right.
is a physical connection. There has to be an emotional connection.
Right.
It has to.
Well,
there
that's what
has
I
to
was
be-
trying to figure out, if you had seen that done really well somewhere.
I
For somebody
have.
who likes Insta love, where can they see it done really well?
Bryn Kelly has a couple of books that are super, like, I say I write light suspense because Bryn Kelly writes, third world. She's from New Zealand, and she writes like third world country, like stuff that's going on, and it's, some of it is kind of disturbing because it's reality. It's what really does go on in these countries. And her people are 3 or 4 days, but it is like a running for your life type of thing. And it is, you're protecting each other, and you've gotten to the point where you are trusting your life with this other person. So her 4-day books feel like 4 months. So Bryn Kelly has, and Deception Island is one. I can't remember the names of them, but she just has a few.
That's a good option. Amy?
Mary Comey. Her her Fix It books. Yes. And of course, and I'm kind of bummed that she didn't make it to the panel, but Victoria Sue, that you get their characters are so engrossing that you get absolutely sucked in, and you're like, yes, of course they're going to move in together after a weekend. Of course, they couldn't be without each other. It's absolutely, I mean, they're both the absolute queens of making you fall in love with the characters, and the characters fall in love with each other immediately.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate your thoughts and your opinions on the subject. Like I said, I know a lot of readers have very strong feelings about whether or not they think Insta love is something that can happen or should happen in romances. So thank you for expanding a little on that for us. Let's see, Amy, why don't you tell people what you have had come out recently, what you've got coming out maybe later this year, any appearances you might be making, and where to find you and your books online.
Well, you can find me online at Amy Lane Anonymous on Facebook. I Twitter a little bit, but like my Twitter game is crap. But Amy Lane Anonymous is a fun place to be. My most recent book is The Driver from the Long Con series. Not Insta love. They met in the book before, and but they do have a fairly intense couple of weeks. And that just came out like 2 weeks ago. My next book coming out is Constantly Cotton, and it is kind of Insta love, so that's fine.
Oh, there you go.
Well, it's a hurt comfort. So a wounded soldier shows up at a porn star's door, and he ends up taking care of him, and right.
Yeah.
And right now I'm only scheduled for GRL. I have become more of a homebody of late. I'm like 1-2 trips a year, and I'm fairly happy. Of course, most of us have. Right. Well, that's cool. And I think that was everything, right? What just came out, what's coming out soon. And you got it all. Got it all.
All right, Carrie.
You can find me. My website is carrielamore.com. I'm on Facebook. mostly that's, I have a reader group called the Lit Lounge. So you can find me there. Actually, if you go on my website, there's a click you
Link.
can get to.
Mhm.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but not doing anything major there. I mostly promote other people's books.
Mhm.
My newest book is called Ranges of Acadia, Jordan Pond. And it's actually, it's a reunion story, but this couple met like 5 years ago, and in the course of a few months, they fell in love and got married, and then hits
Stuff
the fan.
happened.
And so they're apart, and so this is them getting back together again, realizing
Gotcha.
that the other's still around. So not insta love, but it had kind of been a quickie relationship. So that's the first in a series. I do have a book coming out in the fall, 2 books coming out in the fall. One is called Donovan, and it's part of a multi-author project. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to announce it. It's called Last Man Standing. So there's a bunch of us that are all writing like the last, so it's the connecting theme is that they're all bachelors who have been bachelors forever. Mine is an auction where he gets auctioned off to this girl. Her mother used to work for his very rich family, and
Nice.
so she buys him to work for him for an entire month on her farm, and she's going to have him mucking out stalls and
Oh my
doing some stuff.
gosh.
That's great.
So this one's actually it's for a sweet clean, which I don't typically write. So I had to like tone everything down, but it actually was fun to write because I really
adorable.
focused on the relationship versus any of that more intimate
Funny
stuff.
business.
Yeah. And then I do have another book called Masquerade Under the Moon, which is part of a Last Chance Speech, which is a world.
Gotcha.
And the first book, Secrets Under the Sun, came out last year, and Masquerade Under the Moon is the Playboy brother. So we get to
Very cool.
be here at a little kick in the pants, because we like to do that to those Playboys.
Yes, absolutely.
And
All right, ladies.
That
Oh,
it?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm
Anything
just
else?
checking. Was there
I think we
anything else
got
that
it.
Okay, good.
Nope, you're all good. I appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. And again, all of your opinions and thoughts on the Insta Love. And for those of you who are watching, I was looking for comments. I didn't see any questions or comments. So if I missed anything, I am very sorry. Definitely, if you're watching later during one of the replays, you can still leave questions or comments. I will try to go back through. I will, suggest maybe the authors take a minute if they want to check and see if there's any questions that got missed that maybe they can answer for you. But we definitely appreciate you tuning in and watching and hopefully enjoying our chat. And I think that wraps us up. Please check out the schedule for the rest of the weekend. We've got more things happening later today and tomorrow. And we will see you for more of the Coastal Magic Convention's 10th anniversary weekend. Have a good day, guys. Bye.